The queen's face looked flawless. Every morning, servants gathered around her mirror as sunlight entered the royal chamber. They brushed white powder across her skin, painted her lips deep red, and covered every small imperfection until she appeared almost unreal. Courtiers called her the most beautiful woman in Europe. But beneath that beauty, her body was slowly collapsing. Her teeth loosened first. Then came the headaches, the shaking hands, the exhaustion that no amount of sleep could cure. And by the time the royal physicians understood what was happening, the poison had already spread through her blood for years, because the makeup used to make the queen beautiful was killing her. The year is 1578. Inside the royal court of Europe, beauty is more than appearance. It is status, influence, and power. Pale skin is especially admired because it proves a woman does not work under the sun like ordinary laborers. The whiter the skin, the higher the rank. And no woman represented this ideal more than Queen Isabella. At 23, Isabella was admired across Europe for her appearance. Poets described her skin as whiter than moonlight. Foreign ambassadors wrote letters praising her elegance and grace. But beauty inside royal courts was rarely natural. Every morning before sunrise, Isabella sat silently while servants applied a cosmetic called Venetian cerise across her face and neck. It looked harmless, a smooth white cream made from vinegar and lead. At the time, people did not fully understand how dangerous lead could be. They only knew the mixture created perfect pale skin and covered scars, wrinkles, and blemishes better than anything else. So noble women used it constantly. At first, the results seemed magical. Under candlelight, Isabella's skin appeared smooth and glowing. Guests at royal banquets stared at her in admiration. Painters struggled to capture her appearance accurately because they believed no ordinary color matched her skin. But slowly, strange changes began appearing. Her face became painfully dry beneath the makeup. Small patches of hair started falling onto her silk pillows. Then her teeth darkened. The palace physicians blamed stress and exhaustion. Servants whispered about curses or illness. Still, Isabella continued wearing the makeup every day because by then she no longer recognized herself without it. That was the saddest part. The poison was not only affecting her body, it was changing how she saw herself. Soon the headaches became unbearable. Some nights, servants heard her crying behind closed doors, while musicians played softly in nearby halls to hide the sounds from the royal court. Her hands trembled during dinners. Sometimes she forgot simple words mid-conversation and stared blankly ahead while nobles pretended not to notice. Yet every morning, despite the pain, the servants still painted her face white. Because queens were expected to appear perfect, no matter how much they suffered. Years later, the makeup grew thicker. The queen grew weaker. Without cosmetics, her skin had become damaged from years of poison. Painful sores spread beneath the powder. Her hairline slowly disappeared, forcing servants to fit expensive wigs onto her head before public appearances. Still, the court continued calling her beautiful. Everyone could see she was becoming sick. But as long as the illusion remained untouched, nobody dared speak honestly. One winter evening, Isabella collapsed during a royal banquet. Witnesses said her golden goblet slipped from her trembling fingers before she fell onto the marble floor. The musicians stopped playing instantly. Nobles stared in silence as physicians rushed toward her. And for the first time in years, the servants could not completely hide what the makeup had done. Beneath the white powder, her skin looked pale gray and cracked. Her lips had lost their color. Small clumps of hair loosened from beneath her jeweled wig. The queen, who once looked untouchable, now looked painfully human. She survived the collapse, but barely. Afterward, Isabella locked herself inside her chambers for weeks. Mirrors were covered with cloth. Servants walked quietly through dark hallways carrying medicines that no longer helped. And yet, when she finally returned before the royal court, her face was painted white once again, even knowing it was destroying her. Because by then, the makeup had become more than beauty. It had become protection. Without it, she feared nobody would admire her anymore. Queen Isabella died at 32 years old. Official records blamed fever, but servants who prepared her body for burial described damaged skin, trembling limbs, blackened teeth, and severe hair loss consistent with lead poisoning. The very thing that made her admired had slowly ruined her from within. And she was not alone. Across Europe, countless noblewomen poisoned themselves, chasing impossible standards created by royal courts obsessed with perfection. Perhaps that is why stories like Isabella's still feel relevant today. Because even centuries later, people continue hurting themselves, trying to become what society calls beautiful. Different products, different standards, but the same fear of not being enough. History reminds us that some poisons are not forced upon people. Sometimes they are sold as beauty. If you enjoyed this story and want more forgotten historical stories from royal courts and ancient civilizations, consider subscribing. And remember, sometimes the price of perfection becomes far greater than people realize.